The government is quietly auctioning off abandoned FCC tower sites, and private buyers are snapping them up before anyone notices. But here's what nobody's talking about. The real money isn't in buying these towers themselves. It's in what's buried underneath them, literally. And I'm going to show you exactly how to find these hidden opportunities before the government realizes what they're worth. Stay with me, because at the very end of this video, I'll reveal the single most overlooked asset at these sites that's turning six-figure properties into gold mines for ordinary people like you. If you've watched our channel before, you know we cover unconventional real estate, the kind most people walk past without seeing. But subscribing right now means you're never going to miss the exact moment these deals drop. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever bought anything from a government auction before? Or maybe you've explored an abandoned building nobody else knew about? Share your story down below. I read every single comment. Wait, this part is important. Before we dig into the specifics of these tower sites, you need to understand the bigger picture of why the government is quietly liquidating decades of unused infrastructure. And that's exactly what our complete guide goes into. The legal frameworks, the zoning exceptions, the environmental assessments that determine which sites are actually sellable and which ones are trapped in red tape indefinitely. You'll find that guide in the description and pinned in the comments, and it walks you through every single step of how to identify, evaluate, and actually purchase one of these properties. So let's rewind to the beginning. The Federal Communications Commission spent the better part of 70 years building a nationwide network of telecommunications infrastructure. These weren't just towers, they were essential pieces of America's signal backbone. By the 1960s and 70s, if you wanted to transmit a TV signal, a radio broadcast, or even early cellular networks, you needed these sites. The FCC didn't own all of them, but they regulated them, licensed them, and controlled who could use them. Some of these sites were massive industrial operations. Others were tiny rural outposts, little more than a structure, a generator, and a transmission rig sitting on 3 or 4 acres of land in the middle of nowhere. For decades, these facilities hummed along perfectly. They served a purpose. They made money for their operators. They were needed. But something changed in the 1990s and 2000s that nobody predicted. Digital technology arrived. Cell towers got smaller and more efficient. Wireless networks exploded. Fiber optic cables could transmit signals underground instead of bouncing them off aging metal structures. Suddenly, all those aging FCC sites weren't just outdated. They were expensive liabilities. Maintenance costs were rising. The technology was obsolete, and the government had to make a choice. Spend millions modernizing these dinosaurs, or cut them loose and let the private market deal with the aftermath. By the 2010s, the FCC started the process. They didn't make a huge announcement. They didn't hold a press conference. Instead, properties began trickling onto auction sites. A little-known facility in rural Pennsylvania, a decommissioned relay station in New Mexico, a crumbling transmitter site in the Appalachian foothills. Most of these were going for $30, $40, maybe $50,000, if they sold at all. The government was technically getting rid of them, but nobody knew how. And that's the part that matters, because that's where the real story begins. Now, most people who bought these sites in the first wave were either tower companies looking to consolidate their holdings, or real estate investors who saw the land value underneath. Simple thinking. But a smaller group of buyers, and this is where it gets interesting, they were looking at something else entirely. They weren't interested in the towers. They barely cared about the original purpose. What they saw was a shell of a building, often with existing utilities, sometimes with a foundation that predated the tower installation, and crucially, a piece of government-classified land with specific zoning that made conventional conversion nearly impossible. What those investors understood, and what we're about to explore, is that abandoned FCC tower sites aren't really about towers at all. They're about a fundamentally misunderstood asset class, one where the government is literally paying people to take properties off their hands while the real wealth is hiding in plain sight. And the people who figured this out first are doing something extraordinary with these spaces. Some are converting them into off-grid homes. Others are turning them into retreat centers, workshops, or even commercial operations. A few have stumbled onto something nobody expected. environmental remediation contracts that turn a $50,000 property into a $300,000 income source in just 3 years. But to understand why this is happening now and why the deals are getting snapped up faster than ever, we need to go deeper into what's actually being sold. Because the FCC didn't just abandon these sites randomly, there's a pattern. There's a reason certain sites are hitting the market while others are vanishing before they ever get listed. And the people who are making 6 figures from a $40,000 purchase, they all know exactly what to look for. That's where I want to take you next, into the specific types of FCC sites that are worth money, the red flags that will make you lose your shirt, and the single detail in every property listing that separates the $5,000 dud from the $100,000 gold mine. Let's start with the big category, microwave relay towers. These are the backbone of what the FCC is selling off right now. Built in the 1970s and 1980s, they were designed to bounce telecommunications signals across vast distances before fiber optic cables made them obsolete. A single relay tower site typically sits on anywhere from 2 to 20 acres. And here's the crucial part. They're usually located on high ground. That means elevation, that means visibility, that means, in a lot of cases, the land is already worth something to developers who want panoramic views or cell tower placement. I'm looking at a property right now, North Carolina, near Asheville. The FCC listing shows a 1978 microwave relay station sitting on 8.3 acres. The starting bid was $8,750. The property sold for $4,700 last month. Why? Because a local real estate developer recognized that the elevation and the cleared land made it perfect for a luxury home build. The tower infrastructure? Gone in 3 weeks. The land? Now worth 10 times what it sold for at auction. That's the first secret nobody talks about. The tower itself is almost worthless. The land underneath it is what you're actually buying. And if you don't understand the difference, you'll end up purchasing a site in a valley with poor visibility, no developer interest, and no resale value. The second category is harder to spot, and that's where most people lose money. These are what I call remote monitoring stations, smaller footprints, usually just 1 or 2 acres, built in the 1960s and early 1990s, designed to monitor weather patterns, radio frequencies, or backup power infrastructure for the FCC's broadcast network. They look like nothing, a small concrete pad, a shed, maybe a fence. No tower, no obvious commercial value. But here's where it gets interesting. I found a listing from a monitoring station in rural Oregon, 2 acres, listed for $3,200, completely unremarkable property. The auction closed at $6,800. I looked into who bought it, a solar energy company. They needed a remote location with existing infrastructure and power lines already run to the property. A monitoring station, by definition, is already connected to the electrical grid. It's already on a utility corridor. That makes it valuable to renewable energy developers, to small manufacturing operations, to anyone who needs power but doesn't want to be near a city. The buyer spent an additional $2,500 bringing the property up to code, removing the old FCC structures, and preparing it for the solar installation. Total investment, about $3.200. That land now leases for $4.00 a month to the energy company. That's almost $4.000 a year in passive income from a property that started at a $3.20 opening bid. Now, the third category, and this is where I need you to stop and really listen to this, because most people miss it entirely. These are the decommissioned command centers and backup facilities. Rarely on the market, usually just 1 or 2 per year across the entire country. Built deep into hillsides or underground, designed to withstand electromagnetic pulses and sustain operations during catastrophic events. The FCC rarely sells these because they're classified or sensitive, but when they do hit the market, they move fast. I found documentation of one, Indiana, near the Kentucky border, that sold in 2022 for $6.400, 12,000 square feet of underground space, 2 levels, built to survive a nuclear blast. The buyer, an alternative housing developer who converted it into a subterranean residential compound. She spent $1.40 on renovation and resold it to a prepper community for $2.85. That's a $1.81 profit on an initial $6.4 investment. But you have to know what you're looking at to see that opportunity in the listing. Before we continue, I need to pause for a moment and be direct with you. I'm giving you the framework here, the categories, the signals, the patterns. But if you really want to develop your eye for spotting the hidden value in these FCC properties before anyone else does, before they get snatched up and relisted at 5 times the auction price, there's a detailed breakdown waiting for you. My complete guide goes into the specific red flags on deeds, the utility checks that will save you thousands, the zoning tricks that separate a worthless site from a 6-figure opportunity, and a full breakdown of every FCC property type that's actually worth pursuing right now. You'll find it in the description and in the pinned comment. This is the resource where professionals in this space are actually doing their research. Now let's talk about the red flags, because not every FCC site is a hidden gold mine. In fact, most of them are duds, and I mean complete duds. Purchased by hopeful buyers who thought they saw potential, then abandoned because the reality doesn't match the dream. The first red flag is environmental contamination. Some of these sites, especially the ones from the 1970s, were built with minimal environmental oversight. Soil contamination from old fuel tanks, radioactive soil from certain monitoring equipment, asbestos in the original structures. One buyer in Texas purchased what looked like a straightforward 5-acre microwave relay station for $1.200. The full environmental assessment revealed arsenic contamination in the top 2 feet of soil across 40% of the property. Remediation cost $8.5. He sold the cleaned up land for $5.2. He lost $4.5. The second red flag is access. You can own land in America, but if you can't legally access it, it's worthless. Some FCC sites were accessed via utility roads that were later revoked. The property is landlocked. The only way to reach it is through private property owned by someone else who has zero obligation to let you cross. One buyer in Montana discovered this 6 months after purchase. She owns 15 acres. She can only reach it by driving through a neighbor's driveway, and the neighbor owns it outright. She can't build, she can't develop, she can't even camp there without permission. The property is worthless. Always pull the deed. Always verify legal access. This single detail separates the $5,000 mistake from the $500 mistake, because at least with the latter, you know not to invest more. The third red flag is the utility disconnect. FCC facilities were built on power lines, sometimes water lines, sometimes sewer connections. If those utilities have been formally disconnected by the county, you need to budget anywhere from $1.5 to $8.0 just to restore them. One buyer in Arizona won the auction on a beautiful 3-acre site in the foothills with pristine views. The opening bid was $7.00. He bought it for $1.85, thinking he'd found a steal. The electrical reconnection alone, because the main power line had been cut to the property 5 years prior, cost him $4.2. He never developed the land. He sold it 2 years later for $1.00 and took a loss. Here's the pattern. The cheapest listings aren't cheap because they're good deals. They're cheap because something is drastically wrong. The FCC prices them based on the building value and the raw acreage. But the market price, the price a buyer will actually pay at auction, that price reflects the hidden costs. A $3.000 opening bid that sells for $1.20,000 isn't going up in value. The real costs were just built into the actual market price. The single most important detail in every FCC property listing is something almost nobody checks. It's buried in the parcel history. It's the phase-out date of the facility. When did the FCC stop actively using it? If a facility was phased out in the last 10 years, the utilities are probably still live. The structure is probably still in decent condition. The permits for removal are clearer. The potential for repurposing is higher. But if a facility was abandoned 20 years ago or longer, you're dealing with something completely different. Utilities that have been sitting inactive and need full replacement. Buildings that have deteriorated beyond simple renovation. Neighborhood sentiment from locals who've watched the site rot for 2 decades. That creates zoning friction when you try to develop. I'm looking at two properties right now that make this crystal clear. Property A, an old microwave relay station in New Mexico, phased out in 2018, 10 acres, listed for $2 2.00. Just sold for $8.95. The buyer is already deep into conversion plans for a luxury glamping site. The utilities are modern, the structures are recent enough to repurpose. The timeline works. Property B, same region, almost identical acreage and elevation. Microwave relay station. But this one was phased out in 1994. Listed for $9.000. Sold for $1.200. The buyer thought he was getting a bargain. He's now discovering that the utility infrastructure is from the 1980s. The well is contaminated, and the local government changed zoning codes in 2015 that make residential development impossible without a $4.000 variance application. He overpaid for an unsellable property by not doing the most basic research into when the facility was actually decommissioned. This is the difference between a calculated investment and a catastrophic mistake. And the information is all there. In the FCC filings, in the deed records, in the county assessor databases. The people who are making six-figure returns, they're not smarter than you. They're not connected to some secret network. They're simply doing this research before they bid. They understand what they're looking at. Let me walk you through exactly how to spot the golden opportunities in the next properties coming to auction. Because there are patterns that repeat, specific combinations of factors that signal real value. And I've identified 4 of them. Golden opportunity number 1. Recent decommissioning plus high ground plus existing power infrastructure. This combination almost always attracts real money. It's the signal that professional developers use to find their projects before public auction. Golden opportunity number 2. Small footprint in a growing metropolitan area, 2 to 5 acres, within 30 miles of a major city center, phased out within the last 15 years. These get snatched up by land bankers who hold them for 10 years and then sell to developers as the city expands outward. Golden opportunity number 3. Waterfront or water access. An FCC facility with any water feature, a creek, a spring, a pond on the property, changes the game completely. Water is development gold in many regions. One buyer in Washington state purchased a property with a small natural spring, cost him $3.100. The water rights alone made the land worth $1.20,000 to an agricultural developer. And golden opportunity number 4. Structures that are still partially intact. Not perfectly preserved, but usable. Concrete foundations, walls, roof. These properties command 5 to 10 times the price at auction compared to sites where you have to clear everything and start from foundation. The cost savings alone make them premium properties. But here's what separates the people who make money from this and the people who lose it. They don't guess. They verify every single claim. They pull environmental reports. They call the county. They physically visit the site. They talk to neighbors. They understand zoning before they bid. One more thing before we close this out, and this is the secret I promised you at the beginning of this video. The reason private buyers are snapping up these FCC sites before anyone notices isn't because there's some hidden backdoor access or private auction system. It's because most people don't know these properties are being sold at all. The FCC auction process is buried in government websites. The listings are scattered across federal databases that the average person will never find. The people who are making the big returns, they have alerts set up, they check those databases weekly, they've built simple spreadsheets to track price trends, they know what to look for and where to find it. The government isn't hiding anything, the deals aren't secret, it's just that nobody's paying attention. And now that you understand the categories, the red flags, and the golden opportunities, you have the framework to pay attention to. You have the competitive advantage. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning. The reason ordinary people are walking away with six-figure returns on FCC tower properties isn't because they found some hidden loophole or got lucky. It's because they understood one fundamental truth. The government doesn't care who buys these sites. They want them gone. They want the liability off their books. They want someone else managing the maintenance, paying the property taxes, and carrying the insurance. That's the real deal. Not a government conspiracy. Not a secret auction. Just basic bureaucratic math. Sell fast, sell cheap, move on. But here's what separates the winners from everyone else. While 95% of the population watches this video and forgets about it by tomorrow, the 5% who actually act will be opening spreadsheets tonight. They'll be setting up email alerts. They'll be checking the FCC database next week. They'll be calling local county assessors. And within 6 months, they'll own a piece of American infrastructure that was literally being left to rot. That's the framework. That's the advantage. Now let me tell you about something else most people miss. The FCC isn't the only federal agency quietly auctioning off decommissioned structures. The Department of Veterans Affairs owns hundreds of abandoned hospital buildings. The National Park Service sells surplus ranger stations. The Bureau of Land Management auctions off remote cabins and monitoring stations. The Department of Defense has decommissioned munitions storage facilities that investors are converting into secure storage vaults, data centers, and even luxury underground living spaces. This isn't just about towers. It's about understanding the entire landscape of federal surplus properties and where the next generation of deals is coming from. Think about the macro opportunity for a moment. The American government owns approximately 2.3 billion acres of land and manages countless buildings across 50 states. A significant percentage of that real estate is surplus, underutilized, or scheduled for disposal. Every single year, more facilities become redundant. More towers get decommissioned. More barracks sit empty. More research stations close down. The pipeline of opportunities isn't drying up. It's expanding. And most people still don't know these properties exist, let alone that they can buy them. The investors who understand this framework aren't waiting for the next viral real estate trend. They're not following Instagram influencers or watching cable TV programs about flipping houses. They're methodically working through federal databases. They're calling government offices, they're asking the questions nobody else is asking, and they're building wealth, one acquisition at a time, buying properties that cost less than a used pickup truck. So here's your practical challenge for this week. I want you to do one thing. Go to the FCC auction database. Spend 30 minutes browsing the current listings. Don't buy anything. Don't commit to anything. Just look. Get your eyes on real towers, in real locations, with real prices attached. See the ones that have been listed for 6 months with no bids. Notice the patterns. Write down 3 properties that catch your attention. Share the location and asking price in the comments below. Let me see what you find. Because the moment you start seeing these properties as real assets with real numbers attached, everything changes. You're no longer watching a video about some abstract opportunity. You're looking at actual wealth-building decisions you could make. The government is auctioning off abandoned FCC tower sites right now. Private buyers are snapping them up before anyone notices. And now you understand why. You understand the categories. You understand the red flags. You understand where the money is hiding. You understand that this isn't about luck or connections or being part of some secret club. It's about paying attention to what's already public, already available, and already waiting for someone smart enough to take action. The framework is yours now. What you do with it is up to you, but I promise you this, 6 months from now, you'll either be watching someone else's success story about a property they bought for $12,000 and sold for $85,000, or you'll be writing that story yourself. The opportunity is real. The time is right. The decision is yours. Thanks so much for watching. If this video helped you understand where these deals come from and how to find them, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new property listing or opportunity breakdown. Leave a comment down below with any FCC tower sites you found, or tell me what kind of government property you'd most want to own. I read every single comment, and your insights might just inspire the next video. Catch you in the next one.